Welcome along at theraces.com. We're gearing up for the Cheltenham Festival. The next race we're going to have a look at is an intriguing battle over 2.5 miles for the Thursday afternoon's JLT Novices Chase. The race looking wide open. Here, the pick of some of the form.
On the outside, Wonderful Charm with tongue lolling out to Bears Affair. McCoy's keeping at him. In second place on the inside would be half a length down, and they are 10 or 12 lengths clear of Brian Hughes on King of the Night, who's accepted the situation. So one left to jump for Wonderful Charm. On the outside of Bears Affair, needs a good jump here. Wonderful Charm, and over about a length and a half ahead of Bears Affair, and now draws clear and does so pretty instantly in the hands of Daryl Jacob. What a natural on chasing debut. Wonderful Charm wins very well indeed.
And Brian Cooper in the lead. From in second place, Muzzletoft, Paul Townend, Felix Younger towards the outside. Trifolium is over and clear. Muzzletoft and Felix Younger ahead of Ted Veal, who's moved into fourth. Defy Logic back in fifth, but it's Trifolium who's out in front and running up towards the finish. It's Trifolium who's put up a fine performance here to win the Frank Ward Solicitors Arkle Chase in great style. Trifolium and Brian Cooper win for Charles Burns in the Jigginstown colours. Felix Younger beats stable companion Muzzletoft for second and third, and Ted Veal is fourth.
As the leaders jump two out, Bob Ford led but made another jumping error. Taquin du Seuil is still being held on to by AP McCoy, who checks to see that the other two are well beaten off before asking Taquin du Seuil to hit the front going into the wings of the last. Neither were that fluent. Taquin du Seuil, though, is full of running. Bob Ford is being easily left behind by the favourite on the run-in, and Taquin du Seuil is still in third gear and hacks up on his chasing debut to win with his ears pricked.
He had a growing lead, though, over Funny Star. Coming down there was Minella, definitely when well held. High Note's been impeded, but continues. Here's the final fence then. Uxizandra at the last, steadied into it, popped over it nicely enough. And Uxizandra from Funny Star, the gap between them is 10 to 12 lengths. High Note now just coming to the last fence. Now she's over it safely. Bangkok Peak trying to complete as well, but Uxizandra's already at the line, wins again.
Bright New Dawn, Jack Adam, Molyneux River, couple of lengths off them in third. The final fence now, nothing between them. Jack Adam on the inside of Bright New Dawn. These two battling it out inside the last 150 yards. Jack Adam, Bright New Dawn on the near side in second, clear of Molyneux River. But Jack Adam is digging deep now for Paul Townend and running up to the finish. It's Jack Adam now who goes on to score by a good 3 lengths in the end, maybe 4. Bright New Dawn second.
So, the JLT Novices Chase. The At the Races cameras were at Fakenham to catch Wonderful Charm's first ever run over fences. It was a successful one, as we'll see now with Dan Barber taking his eye on this form from Fakenham. Dan, I don't know, always been a very interesting horse, Wonderful Charm, but you can't really talk about Wonderful Charm without talking about Oscar Whiskey either. The two of them closely matched, aren't they?
Yeah, and that ties in as well with Taquin du Seuil, I'm sure we'll discuss when. It is hard to pick between them, there's no doubt about that. I think it's more a case of not analysing strictly the form they've achieved so far, but how they will cope with the demands of the race. And I think that's something that will stand in Wonderful Charm in better stead, perhaps, than Oscar Whiskey. It was easy to grab this because it was merely Fakenham, but I thought he created a massive impression on this day. His jumping is fault-free, it really is. And then he's since done little to dispel the theory that he's a very exciting horse, and it may have been an air of hyperbole about it. But let's not forget that Paul Nicholls was talking about this horse along the lines of a potential World Hurdle winner last season, but I think he really has delivered on that home promise since he's been switched to chasing, and I think it's a horse with loads to recommend him. He was arguably unlucky not to beat Oscar Whiskey when they met at Cheltenham. I think if Jacob would have gone for him sooner and not allowed it to turn into a dash after the last, he may have got the better of that horse. He was conceding weight as well, so certainly in terms of bare form as it stands, he's a notch ahead, and I think he's probably better equipped to jump round the Cheltenham fences in a well-run race, which I do think is an existing worry for Oscar Whiskey that really wasn't put to bed when he ran at Sandown last time. If anything, that was Oscar Whiskey's least impressive display over fences so far.
Fascinating contenders, nevertheless. As indeed would Felix Younger be if Willie Mullins goes here. Obviously, most of the winter we've been thinking 2 miles or 2.5. His defeat here in the Moriarty obviously was over the shorter trip, and he gave the impression he would love another go at 2.5 miles.
Yeah, and I just think there's a general impression with him as well that he just wasn't 100% on this day for whatever reason. His jumping got rather ragged in the back straight, and he never could really get into a rhythm. And when you're at 2 miles against a horse who I think plenty will fancy, and I fancy myself for the Arkle in Trifolium, you can't get away with such mistakes. But he'd beaten Trifolium fair and square prior to that when they met. Really impressed with him that day. I think another key point to mention as well is over hurdles, and this is a function of being trained by Willie Mullins and being prepared ideally for the big day, but his best run over timber was undoubtedly at the Cheltenham Festival, second to Simon Sig in the Neptune. And if he can deliver on that sort of promise over fences, the way he jumps generally leads me to believe that he will be at least as good over fences and be just about edging the Irish Challenge as far as I'm concerned, but possibly edging the overall challenge as well.
Yeah, I look now at Taquin du Seuil, who will be one of John Joe O'Neill's big hopes of the entire week. What I like about this horse, not just his ability, but John Joe's clearly this winter tried to get lots of experience into him, and most times he's come up trumps.
He really has. I don't think he's put a foot wrong. The day when Oscar Whiskey beat him at Cheltenham, bear in mind he got Oscar Whiskey's measure the first time they met. I just don't think he was well positioned, and again, a race that didn't test his ability really. It was a race where he was caught behind rivals and conceded first run to Oscar Whiskey, which, as with Wonderful Charm when he met Oscar Whiskey, I think Jacob in that instance was guilty of it. I think McCoy was guilty of it slightly when he met Oscar Whiskey at Cheltenham, but I think we saw a better side of him as well at Haydock last time. He was left with little to beat, but boy did he impress. O'Phalin's boy disappointed in that race. I think he had a physical problem, but it's hard not to be impressed by the way that Taquin du Seuil jumps and travels, and he does, on the jumping score, seem to be getting better all the time, which is surely linked to the fact that John Joe's running him so regularly, getting match practice, and he'll be pretty well tuned up for the day undoubtedly, and I think he's a horse again that he's battle hardened enough to make you think that going around Cheltenham in a well-run race will not be an issue.
Do you have any? Do you share the view at all that he's an out-and-out mud lover, Dan?
Not necessarily, but who's to say at this point? I think the likelihood is it will be on the soft side of good. It's not going to at the very best we're looking at good to soft ground, but yeah, I don't think the weather forecast will be particularly inspiring between now and then. I'm sure we're going to get more rain, so I think there's a case as well. He's very effective in the mud, but is that because it inconveniences others and he's absolutely okay in it? I think he's got so much speed, as we see there, that less testing ground won't be a problem. Yeah.
Well, even if you had just the three of them in the race, it would be an absolute beauty, wouldn't it? Wonderful Charm, Taquin du Seuil, Oscar Whiskey, they're formed very tight together. Neither's been ever beaten very far by the other. Do you have a strong view as to which one will come out on top of those three?
Between that trio and Wonderful Charm, on the grounds, I think he's arguably the best jumper of the three. I think he would be unbeaten now if it wasn't for the ride that he was given at Cheltenham. I think he should have beaten Oscar Whiskey that day, and for Oscar Whiskey, this is going to be a totally different test of his mettle. His jumping has looked the least fluent of the trio, and I think Wonderful Charm will come out on top of the British contingent.
OK, so that one gets your vote for the JLT, Dan?
I actually think it's Felix Younger, though, honestly, John. I think Wonderful Charm wins the private race between the British, but Felix Younger, back up in trip, back at the festival where he peaked over hurdles and freshened up by arguably the best trainer in the business to get him ready for the big day, and at the prices I'll just have him slightly ahead of the Nichols runner.
What a great race that promises to be on the Thursday afternoon of the Cheltenham Festival, the JLT Novices Chase over 2.5 miles. Keep it all right here on attheraces.com.